Okay, the mission statement for the Lake Mills Area School District is preparing all of today's students for tomorrow's opportunities. Has the meeting been properly posted?
Yes, it was posted on the LMASD website and at the Lake Mills Post Office and submitted to the Lake Mills Leader.
All right, then I will call this meeting to order, and I will invite all that are able to stand and join me in the pledge. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. All right. May I have a roll call for attendance?
Brianna Beslick. Here. Ken Imers.
Here.
Andrea Graham.
Here.
Kirk Lund.
Here.
Amy Litcher.
Here. Are there any revisions to the agenda?
I'll move the board, move the school officer, resource officer report to the very bottom of the agenda after the future agenda items, and then the rest as presented.
Okay.
I'll second that.
Okay. And at this time, I see it in the notes. If you would like anything on the consent agenda to be pulled off, we can do it at this time. In anything? All right, then I will ask for a voice vote on the motion. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, same sign. All right, it passes. All right, now we will move on to a report on the work session that just completed. Am I right? Okay, all right. We just met for 2 hours and had discussed and set a school board purpose and school board aspirations. And the school board purpose is as the elected entity charged with governing the Lake Mills Area School District, the school board is responsible to the district community to govern efficiently, effectively, and ethically as a single unit. The school board's purpose is to provide visionary and effective governance that ensures the highest quality education for all students and a welcoming and safe environment for its students and employees. The board is dedicated to providing effective oversight by holding the superintendent accountable to the district's visions, goals, and policies. Board decisions are guided by strategic plan, district policy, and governmental regulations. By working collaboratively with the superintendent and adhering to established policies, the board strives to support the district's mission of preparing all of today's students for tomorrow's opportunities. And I will email it to us and obviously to the administration there's some typos, but that's effectively what we have. And then we also decided for board aspirations. Should I read those? Or can we just send those and make them available on the district website? Okay, got it. So, and at the next meeting, for our next regular meeting, we're going to talk about board goals, board operational goals. Got it? All right. So that.
Talked about having it at 5:30.
The board workshop from 5:30 to 6:30, and then at 6:30, then we'll start our regular meeting. All right. And the next item on the board reports is referendum communication. As was decided this past meeting, we will have 2 questions for referendum coming up in November. And the communications team has been meeting, and they would like the board to discuss we don't have to have it as an action item, but that it would make communication easier if we can, as a board, say we are not moving forward with question 2 if it passes and question 1 doesn't. Or do we want to hold that off and not have that part of the communication plan? And again, the question 1 is the 36.9 for the different schools and for safety and the different the operational, or not operational, facility improvements. And then this question 2 is for the lower gym demolition and construction.
So what you're asking is in the communication outward,
Yep.
that, should we include that if one doesn't pass, we're not,
If the question 1 does not pass and question 2 does, will we move forward with question 2?
yeah, and the answer would be no, right?
It was my understanding that with question 2, part of that dollar amount was created based off of some things that were being done in question 1. So it would be my understanding that we wouldn't be able to do question 2 because the dollar
That's
amount
kinda
wouldn't
what I
quite
thought.
be what we need it to be because
Okay.
we would have to do some other things because question 1 wouldn't be happening.
And it's not, and that's how we want to communicate it.
That's accurate.
Yeah.
Yeah. So that's, and it's not that we have to vote on it or provide an action item or anything. It's just for communication out, or like, for some people, if you go, they're asking that question, if question 1 doesn't pass and 2 does. So,
Sure.
okay.
I still think it's effectively so unlikely that scenario will happen, that 2 will pass and 1 won't.
Yes.
So, but we should have clear messaging on it anyway, but
Got
I
it.
don't think it's going to happen.
I could see just based on the sheer amount, 36.9 is a lot more than 14.3. So I could see someone saying, yes, I'll support that, but not the first. So, yeah. Clear
Okay.
communication on that would be fabulous.
Okay.
Megan?
And is there any other,
Just what I have in board docs is that Tasha, Amy, and I met on Thursday morning again with the folks from Baird Financial. And as you probably remember, the calculations for the tax impact were figured on a very conservative figure, which they always do. But it's really a very favorable, some favorable conditions have come to light, and so we discussed at length, should we move the $2 per $100,000 tax impact to 0? Because it is in fact, we expect it will be 0, in fact, so they even said probably less than 0 at this point, and we came to the conclusion that because of the messaging that we've done with the CAT team, there's no harm in still staying conservative with those figures, just in the off chance that something would change, but they are feeling very confident that we should be able to, if both questions were to pass, that both questions would be at 0 tax impact to the citizens of Lake Mills.
But you're saying keep it the way it is now,
So our communication out will still show the $2 per 100,000. That was the group consensus.
So that there's 0 tax impact, is that just simply means we're borrowing the money and paying it back, and it's not going to require increasing the tax levy?
You mean if both questions would pass at a 0
Yes.
tax impact? Right,
Yes.
you will not see any impact in addition to your current school levy on that. I mean, and so, what's that, worst case scenario, both questions fail, it's $2 per 100,000. So, we did the chart of, it's $8 on a $400,000 house per year. That tax impact would be, but said even at today's estimates, they're looking at probably even less than 0, which I know is hard to fathom. We talked at length to that. You know the reasoning behind the 2 questions. We were concerned about, kind of a 50-50 mix with the lower gym. And now all of a sudden changing both questions to 0, we thought, well, why, would people wonder why are there 2 separate questions if the net tax impact is 0? So we decided we're just going to stay with the communication the way it is.
and please correct, I think Tasha will be able to better speak. For the tax levy, it will be 0, potentially 0 increase in tax levy on the referendum portion of the tax levy?
Correct. So that's on the Fund 39, so the debt portion. So that's one thing that in our written communication and I guess our verbal communication too is important to make note that this is, when we say zero tax impact, it's on that debt service piece of it. There's other moving pieces and other funds that contribute to that levy, but for the purpose of this communication, it's important to say that this is for the debt, that zero is on there.
Okay. All right, any other questions? All right, moving on to Ken and correspondence.
Yeah, thank you. The board received a very nice thank you note from Tracy Zetlow, the kindergarten teacher, in appreciation for the memorial gift in honor of her mother. And the note reads, "Thank you so much for the gift of a plant in my mom's memory. She loved plants so much, so it was a wonderful way to remember her. Tracy." It's also signed by Brian Stratos and Angie Zastro.
All right, moving on to administrative reports, and the first up is Miss Everson for the Director of Student Services.
Good evening. I am here for our annual report. According to the regulations as stipulated by Act 125, required to provide the school board with an annual report outlining the district's use of seclusion and restraint during last school year, the 23-24 school year. You can see in the chart that we had 0 instances of seclusion across the district, 1 instance of seclusion. Let me back up. That was with general education students. The next column is we had 1 instance of seclusion with our special education students, and then 0 instances of restraint for both general education and special education students. You'll see down below, seclusion is defined as the involuntary confinement of a student away from other students in a supervised area where the student is physically prevented from leaving. Physical restraint is defined as immobilizing or reducing the student's ability to freely move all or part of his or her body. Going down into, and what I should say too, both are a very, very last resort. We have been using the nonviolent crisis intervention training when intervening with students that are struggling. And within that program, the bulk, I would say 3/4 of it, is really working on de-escalation strategies, so training our staff to know what to do when students are escalating before we would ever consider intervening with physical intervention. We have all of our special education staff trained, teachers, paraeducators, specialists, along with a lot of our general education staff, including safety teams and administration. And starting last year, we also had all of our new staff come in for the de-escalation portion of the training. So they're not certified in NBCI, but they get that really key part to help them manage their classroom. Let's see, last year we had 2 certified trainers. Mr. Woodford left the district, so we're going into this school year with 1, but we plan to have 1 or 2 more people trained throughout the school year. I think that's a critical part to continuing to keep our staff educated. They can help us be preventative, but also help us on the back end to problem solve around tricky situations. What questions do you have?
Is there an explanation for the drastic decrease in numbers between this school year and last school year?
Well, I think some of the more specific information, I would be better if we talked one-on-one, because I wouldn't share student information, obviously, but it's more private. I do think more broad scope. We worked really hard across the district to create student plans with our special ed teams, with our student services team around safety and behavior. We also met with parents to bring them in because they know their children the best, to make sure everyone was on the same page on how to respond when certain situations arise. So I really think that's the key part. I think having 2 trainers in our district is also helpful to be able to consult with so we can avoid those situations.
Thank you.
That's a really good reduction and, yeah.
I was just going to say too, I sat with you at the new teacher lunch, and I think that, like you said, that de-escalation portion is huge, just to have a little bit of an understanding, even if you're not fully certified, because in a world where we have so much stimulation these days and craziness going on, I think that that can help a lot of people, students and adults. So I think that that's really helpful to just know what to look for to set them up for success right away from the beginning with all students.
Agreed.
Are there any other questions? All right, thank you. And our next administrative report is from Tanya.
And as you discussed at the beginning of the meeting, you know, the board and the administration has been working pretty heavily this summer on the alignment of the strategic plan all the way down to the classroom. And I think we're in a good place to finally be able to achieve that work. We appreciate Dr. Joe Schrader for the facilitation of that process. And so he worked for several hours with the district office cabinet, and then for about a half a day with the administrative team. And what you see in front of us is the outcome of that. I would say as we go through this first year, you know, nothing is exactly perfect as what you think going into that, but we have had a lot of discussion on those items. So for example, on the scorecard, that would be a front-facing metric that would be on the website, and really showing people these are our goals, here's where we would like to be in 2 years at the end of this first 5-year strategic plan, and here's how we're growing. And obviously if we're not making gains, then how do we readjust in real time to make sure that we are able to achieve what we're looking at? And we talked at length about making sure that these metrics are aligned to, you know, some piece of research that shows why they would be important for overall growth. So they weren't picked haphazardly. Some of these are going, it's going to be more qualitative data based on surveys that we will be using, whether the surveys are with staff or with parents or even our own students. Some of them are more quantitatively based on either summative measures that we have through our state assessment system or more formative measures that we have, for example, like our iReady testing, or even hopefully at some point getting down to some common assessments that we'll be developing in our grade levels and departments. And so each one of the 4 pillars is represented on that. Now, when you go to the continuous performance report, that is the action plan of the overall admin team that we are working through. That will actually get translated down into the individual school learning goals that they will be developing with the teachers this year as far as that actionable plan that we're implementing. The nice thing is, because the administrative team participated in the SAIL Academy, this looks much like what we've already been doing for the 2 years, which is having it monthly on our agenda, our admin team agendas, and then looking at, okay, here's when we said we were going to have this work done. Is it complete? Is it not complete? What do we need to adjust if it's not complete? And having specific people in charge of different items, and then having that timeline to make sure that we are able to work all the way through those items. So with the person being in charge, you're just really overseeing that item. It might be get delegated out to specific people that are doing the actionable part of it, but that one person is assigned to make sure that those actions are being accomplished.
Question. It appeared to me that is it fair to say that for teachers, the overall workload won't be any higher with new measures?
I would say correct. I mean, so that, again, it goes down to reading and math achievement at the elementary basically, and then you taking care of the students in your class, expecting at least a year's growth, and then closing the gaps and accelerating the students that maybe aren't up to that level of proficiency. But correct, the teachers are the ones with the students achieving those goals. You'll see that in that first pillar, a lot of that is driven through our in-service days this year, so that action plan directly correlates to those, whereas the developing and retaining effective leadership and staff will be more committee-based, some internal things that we'll be working on with groups of staff members on those committees. And then still working with our newly formed community education department, and then getting out and making those business contacts and really making that seamless transition between the community and our school district. And then obviously the referendum is the priority in the fall with aligning resources with needs. That's going to be a heavy lift until the election day in November for us.
Any other questions, discussion?
So I really like like you mentioned, like qualitative data and surveys and things like that, especially like how students are feeling connected and those kinds of things. But for our staff, I'm just thinking, did we get results from the spring survey yet? I don't feel like we,
Yeah.
did
Yep.
we?
So that's,
Okay.
I'm going to just open up my right tab. So the staff overall satisfaction number was from the report.
From the one in the
out.
spring, okay.
Right, and then we also have the staff engagement index. So those
Okay.
two questions are directly correlated back to the staff. I should say that I did talk with Rob Demuse on Friday from School Perceptions, because we are going to be using more qualitative data. And as you all know, it's hard to write your own questions that are not biased. And so we did decide to purchase his suite of surveys, which means, because we know we're going to do the staff survey every year, but at least now we've got access. It's a much cheaper option moving forward than paying for each individual survey. You can tailor the surveys to your own needs, which I think will be particularly important when we survey or parents or community members. So we'll be able to use that as far as surveying the community about how recreation activities are going, as well as parents feeling that, are we providing a quality education?
Okay, perfect. And then we were talking about at our board workshop too, just that the strategic plan goes till 2026. Like, it feels like we're just getting started with this and now. So do you think we'll completely revamp, or are we just going to tweak maybe at the end of that, or what is kind of the outlook
I mean,
on
that's
that?
the board's desire, but I know when I've talked with Joe Schrader about that, he saw us as probably just having maybe a half-day work session and coming in, with the board and the administration, groups of teachers, and just kind of maybe tweaking some things based on if we thought there was any needed changes. But, I mean, remember, we did start this plan in the middle of COVID.
And
So
we've
it
had
was a
of
little hard
admin
to get
turnover
going.
Well, so.
Yeah,
it'd be
and
nice
I
to-
think just, we've
Yeah.
had several new, administrators, and it took a while to get, I think, all of us aligned, which is what the SAIL Academy did for us. So I think this is just perfect timing, getting 2 years into this, kind of revamping and moving forward.
Well, and on that too, Andrea, one of the things that he mentioned in our board workshop was that sometimes districts kind of keep those headers on the pillars and then just kind of look at a couple of bullet points underneath to maybe focus a little bit more there. So he felt like, our community put together a really great, solid base. So that was really good.
Okay, thank you.
Any others? All right. Moving on to the community input. Has there been anyone signed up to talk? All right. Then we are on to the consent agenda. And this month's consent agenda includes the approval of the following: July 15th regular meetings, minutes, July 29th facility committee proceedings, August 5th special board minutes, July treasurer's report and vouchers and invoices, and the personnel report.
I'll move the board approve the consent agenda as presented.
Second.
Okay, any questions or discussion on any of those items?
Are we fully staffed for the fall?
We are, yes. Yes, we,
Wonderful.
fortunately, I know, I was thinking is we had just one little last turnover, but
Okay.
we've been really fortunate about having just really phenomenal applicants, so.
It's great to hear.
We are still hiring for bus drivers, so everyone
For bus drivers. Always hiring bus
watching and
drivers.
listening. Okay, bus drivers. One, at least one.
Thank you.
All right, any other questions? Then I will ask for a roll call vote.
Ken Imers,
Aye.
Andrea Graham,
Aye.
Kirk Lund,
Aye.
Brianna Beslick,
Aye.
Amy Litcher.
Aye. All right, on to action items. The creation of the Class 2028 Student Activity Account and Organization. This is a typical, every year, new freshman class. So,
I'll move the board approve the class of 2028 student activity account and organization.
I'll second the motion.
okay, it's been moved and seconded. Any questions or discussion? Hearing none, I will ask for a roll call vote.
Andrea Graham,
Aye.
Kirk Lund,
Aye.
Brianna Beslick,
Aye.
Ken Imers,
Aye.
Amy Litcher.
Aye. All right, substitute pay rates. This was discussed at the last committee meeting, and there is information. If you want to give a brief overview?
Right, so Tasha and I put together a plan of what we thought, after looking at the comparative data moving forward. So we are contracting with Teachers on Call next year, so they will actually be the Teachers on Call employees, but they provided us some data, and then we also asked Becky Hofferman, our payroll specialist, to reach out to her network and payroll and also provide us comparable data. And so we thought, well, we're a little bit on the low side when we started looking at some of this data. And as everybody, I think in the state of Wisconsin, or probably the nation, knows, it's really hard to find substitute teachers. Most of our substitute teachers have a sub-license. They no longer are the days of the retired teachers that retire and then come back and sub. That's more and more rare. I think last year we saw that we did not want our teachers, period, subbing as much as they were, or our administrators subbing as much as they were. So really trying to look at attracting new subs into Teachers on Call, and they will also be doing their own recruiting as well. But we thought starting maybe with a change in pay rate was probably the first step in this process. So we're open to discussion. Like I said, we've just put down some rates. I broke it down, like how much you'd be paid per hour at that rate. When you look at it that way, you could probably see why you don't get a lot of substitute teachers. So even at the increased wage. The long-term teacher rates, that hasn't changed, that we always have on the base. So that's really nothing new. We adjust that each year because that was what the language always was based on beginning teacher's contract.
All right. First, I'll start off with a question. It was 2023-24 budget to the 209,000, right? I mean, that's in the notes. For the 2024-25 budget, that 228,000, is that including these proposed pay rates? Okay.
The budget that we. Sorry, that does not. It's the budget that we approved back a month or two ago.
Okay.
So that would have to be adjusted, and it will anyways, because since that budget, we've also approved using Teachers on Call, so it'll increase a little bit with that too, and those adjustments will come in October.
Okay.
And the reason we can't really take, so one of the things that Tanya and I talked about is we can't really take 30% and tack that on to that budgeted item, because some of those budgeted dollars are going to go to our in-house subs, which are not going to have that Teachers on Call markup. So it's not as easy as just as doing the calculation that way, in case that was going to be a question.
One of the things that I had asked about and wondered, and I'd help me with this, but I know that we have some subs in our district who, frequently come back, or ones that do really well within the building that maybe don't necessarily have a teacher degree or something, right? But they're just constantly here, and we appreciate their work. So some of these in the overall sub rate data spreadsheet, it talks about, you know, a dollar amount and then potentially increasing it after X amount of days. Is that a reward that we could consider for subs like that who are consistently here and helping us and doing a great job with that daily sub rate category? Or is that not a place that that can go?
I think anything is possible.
Because of course, if I'm getting a new sub in the door, right, they're testing the waters, we're seeing if they're working out really well. But I know that, you know, or at least I can see that we've had, you know, certain reoccurring subs come back, you know, time after time after time, but aren't necessarily be able to fit in the teacher category. So if we want to, in a sense, you know, like our pillars, to attract and retain even our great subs, would that be a way to potentially consider them and retain them as a great sub, but not necessarily in a teacher category sub-column?
I've seen districts where they've said after you've subbed, 20 times in the district, now you are at this higher pay rate. So I think you could probably take the retired teacher language and add onto that. So not only that you're a retired teacher, and the reason we had retired teachers is because they've got a teaching license. The subbing looks a lot different, right? When you have a teacher versus somebody that's never taught in a classroom before. But I agree, Brianna, we definitely have some subs that sub, especially at the elementary, on a regular basis that are just real high caliber, that really sub for us almost every day right now. So, I mean, they're ones that we ask back, they take the jobs, they're very, very strong. So, yeah, I could see the difference between maybe somebody working on Teachers on Call who makes decisions like, well, I'm going to sub in this district this day, or I'm going to, and which they have the right to do, versus somebody that's maybe a little bit more committed to the Lake Mills area school district. So, I mean, if we want to put something kind of like the long-term teacher rate, if we want to put some kind of number of days in there as well, I think we could. That it's say the only difference if somebody's going to ask between a long-term teacher is, when you're a long-term sub in the same classroom day after day, you assume the responsibilities of a full-time teacher. You start developing lesson plans. You may have to do parent-teacher conferences. You're doing assessments. You're doing everything a regular teacher would versus the day-to-day subbing in the different classrooms.
I mean, looking at the comparable chart, though, I mean, 140 per day is more than a lot of the places around us. So I think it's good that even with this new rate, someone might still choose Lake Mills over another district in the,
And I wasn't so
vicinity.
sure that the other districts won't raise their rates here somewhere like, this month or next month. So I didn't want to all of a sudden raise it and be like, oh, now we're low again,
I mean, when's the last time we raised it? I think too, if we can just make sure that like maybe every year, could we increase $5 a day every year or something?
It wasn't that long ago. that
Okay.
we
I
think it
talked
was,
about sub
I think it was
rates.
$5 a couple years ago.
Okay. So
I don't
not
think
too
we did
long
last
ago.
year.
I
It
don't
wasn't
think we
too
did
long
either.
ago, but it wasn't in what it raised from.
because
I
we
think.
use the building subs a little bit more. We tried that last year, so I don't, I think you're right. I think it was 2 years ago.
And I would be supportive of offering someone who's not a long-term sub, but someone who's in our building. It's almost like that building sub rate that they have, where they're always in our building. I mean, how many people do you think that would be? Probably wouldn't be that many, honestly.
It's going to vary from day to day too.
Elementary, I could think of 2 just off the top of my head. We do pull them for long-term subbing, as well quite often, but yeah, I think I could think of a couple.
Could we add to that, I mean, on the proposed substitute rates PDF, it's the rate page and then the current language and the proposed language, just the proposed language / definition, change long-term substitute definition for same blah, blah, blah. Number 1, retired teacher, 140 per day increase to 180, blah, blah, blah. And then add a second point to a longer-term sub?
Would we want to say more like regular sub?
Regular sub?
Yeah, because when we look at the $17.50 an hour, that's still per hour that, I mean, even though our daily rate is comparable, if not more than other districts around, it's still, when you, like, you look at it per hour, it's still,
Right, we want to collect our pool of A-plus subs, right? And I think if we know that this person is continually coming back and they know our routines, they know our kids, they've gotten used to the curriculum, they don't necessarily have the retired teacher, background, but they know a lot of other stuff. And so if we can somehow get that pool of those subs to come and help us teach on the days we need them, however that is to happen, I think is just what I would like to see, I guess.
do you think it should match the retired teacher? Or I'm wondering
No.
if we should increase in retired teacher, and like, I guess, what is the number you're thinking?
I don't know. I just think that, if they're not in that same category and we want to make sure that we're collecting that great pool, that if it's, like you said, after so many days, that seemed to be the typical comparatively to the other districts that were given. Sometimes it was after, I don't know,
Well, is it, the retired teacher says, the notes following the chart, the retired teacher 140-day increased to 180 after 20 days.
That was a typo. I just caught that, because Tasha and I were talking, we had it up to 180, so it should say 140 per day increase to 160.
Oh, I'm sorry. Okay.
Only because we were looking at that our teacher subbing rate, when they do internal subbing, is also $20 an hour, so we thought we really shouldn't go above that, otherwise we're going to have to change the internal subbing rate as well, so my apologies for that.
So if we used a 20-day length for that scenario, maybe it should be similar for the other one
Yeah.
as well.
I think if we just had like regular building subs, we could do that, right, put it in that category, change the header.
And that would make it a little easier.
Yeah.
I guess I can also appreciate the fact that you edited the paraeducator to special educator, prices, because I noticed that was a difference between districts too, and we also have it within our own, staff. So I appreciate that you looked at that and considered that in your proposed amount.
And we're almost more desperate for subs for paras than anything else, because we rarely fill the para positions when people are out, and that is a position that can't go unfilled, especially the special ed para. And so we will often be moving staff around internally to make sure that's covered. Jamie, a lot of times, will go in and be that role as a special ed para, so hopefully that'll entice some people as well.
All right. Any other questions?
It'd just be worth mentioning, if I recall, that when the subs go under the TOC, they will get some level of benefits, is that right?
There are benefits through teachers on call.
That's what I mean.
Right, yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, it's also something that I think does save the district some money as well, when we have long-term subs and you do the look back for benefits. If they do sub every day over the school year, you really are required to provide benefits for staff. So,
Okay,
so this would help kind of take the burden off of the district.
yeah.
All right. Any other questions? Then I'll ask for a motion.
Well, are we going to have to come back to this do you need to come back with another proposal, or are we?
I don't know.
If you could make the motion with the change in the regular building sub-language, I could bring it back next month. It just means the pay rate would change in a month from now. We don't fortunately have a lot of subbing till about that last week of September. We have long-term subs in place, but that rate won't change right now.
Then we should
Would you-
table it.
Would you rather wait or make a
The only
motion?
thing I was thinking is, it really would be helpful to know what dollars, back to your question,
Overall change.
Overall change in the budget.
yeah.
Okay.
I think it's just like a due diligence thing,
Okay.
or for us to,
All right.
I think that makes sense.
Then we should table it. All right, then we will table this action item for next month, until next month.
Okay.
All right. Then on to our last action item, gifts.
I'll move that the board always thank their generous donors for their continued support of our students and programs at the Lake Mills Area School District. Lots of donations tonight. One is a $100 donation to the mill from Jessica Dickerson, $150 donation to the school garden from the Tyranina Ladies Club, a $500 donation in memory of Walter Wally Weaver Jr. for student lunch accounts, a $750 donation for school supplies for students from the Moravian Church's school supply drive, an $800 Amazon gift card from St. Vincent de Paul for students' school supplies or clothing needs, and a $1,000 donation to the Lake Mills High School football program from Farmer and Merchants Bank.
I'll second.
Okay, it's been moved and seconded, and again, the amazing support from the community. So, hearing none, I will ask for a roll call vote.
Brianna Beslick,
Aye.
Ken Imers,
Aye.
Andrea Grimm,
Aye.
Kirk Lund,
Aye.
Amy Litcher.
Aye. All right, on to the future agenda items. And for next month's meeting, we will have again the pre-workshop for the hour, and then also coming back with the substitute pay rates for approval. And then you can, student overnight, safety plan, beginning of school updates, student groups, and a district administrator goals in the executive session. So,
Right, and I think, now that we have all these goals like laid out, I don't think there'll be much of a surprise about that. And then just due to Officer Johnson dealing with a situation right now, we'll bring her back next month for that.
Okay.
all right.
We were talking about two in our not committee meeting, but our workshop, that we really love the student groups coming, so we want to make sure to get those every month if possible. And we came up with some ideas, so Amy can share those with you.
All right. Then, our final thing is adjournment.
To adjourn.
I'll second the motion.
All those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. We are adjourned.